On a scorching summer day in 1187, an entire kingdom gambled its survival on a single march. Beneath an unforgiving sun, thousands of armored knights and foot soldiers crossed a dry, hostile land with empty waterskins and fading hope. By nightfall, the most powerful army the Crusader states could assemble would be broken beyond repair. Within months, Jerusalem itself would fall. How did this happen? For nearly 90 years, Christian rule in the Holy Land had endured against overwhelming odds. Castles rose from rocky hills. Armored knights became legends. Sacred cities were defended at all costs. Yet it all unraveled near two volcanic hills known as the Horns of Hattin. This was not just a battle of swords and shields. It was a clash of leadership, patience, faith, and strategy. On one side stood a divided Crusader kingdom, confident in its knights, but fractured by politics and pride. On the other stood Saladin, a commander who had spent years preparing for this moment, waiting for a single mistake. The Battle of Hattin was not inevitable. It was the result of decisions made under pressure, of choices shaped by fear and arrogance, and of a landscape that became a silent weapon. What unfolded there would echo across continents, reshape the Crusades, and redefine how history remembered both the victors and the defeated. To understand the Battle of Hattin is to understand how power collapses not in one moment, but through a series of fatal steps. And once those steps were taken, there was no turning back. To understand the Battle of Hattin, we must step back into the fractured world of the late 12th century, where faith, power, and survival were locked in constant struggle. The Eastern Mediterranean was not a distant frontier. It was the beating heart of medieval geopolitics, where Christian Europe and the Islamic world collided again and again. After the First Crusade captured Jerusalem in 1099, several Christian states were carved into the Levant. The most important was the Kingdom of Jerusalem, stretching from the Mediterranean coast to the Jordan River. It was wealthy, strategically placed, and permanently vulnerable. Its survival depended on fortified cities, alliances, and a steady flow of reinforcements from Europe. Yet those reinforcements were never guaranteed, and unity within the kingdom was often fragile. By the 1180s, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was internally divided. Power rested in the hands of a small nobility whose rivalries weakened every major decision. King Baldwin IV, known as the Leper King, had held the kingdom together through intelligence and caution, despite his illness. But after his death in 1185, stability vanished. A child king briefly ruled, followed by Guy of Lusignan, a noble with little experience and even less political support. Guy's authority was openly challenged by Raymond III of Tripoli, one of the most powerful lords in the kingdom. Raymond favored diplomacy and caution, knowing the kingdom could not survive a major defeat. Guy, supported by militant factions and the Knights Templar, leaned toward confrontation. This division would prove fatal. Across the battlefield stood a very different figure. Saladin, born Yusuf ibn Ayyub, had risen from relative obscurity to unite much of the Islamic world. By 1187, he ruled Egypt, Syria, and large portions of Mesopotamia. Unlike earlier Muslim leaders, Saladin commanded a unified coalition with shared purpose. He was patient, methodical, and deeply aware of his enemy's weaknesses. Saladin understood that Jerusalem could not be taken by force alone. The Crusader castles were strong, their knights formidable. Instead, he aimed to isolate the kingdom, cut its resources, and force it into an unwinnable confrontation. Years of raids, truces, and calculated restraint were all part of a larger strategy. The land itself played a decisive role. The region around Galilee was harsh and unforgiving in summer. Water sources were scarce. Whoever controlled the wells controlled survival. Saladin knew this terrain intimately. The Crusaders, though familiar with the land, often overestimated how quickly it could become a weapon against them. Tensions reached a breaking point due to the actions of Reynold of Chatillon, a reckless Crusader lord notorious for breaking truces. Reynold attacked Muslim caravans, threatened pilgrimage routes, and even planned raids toward Mecca. These actions humiliated Saladin publicly and made renewed war unavoidable. When Reynold captured a caravan that included members of Saladin's family, the Sultan swore revenge. In early 1187, Saladin began his final preparations. He assembled a massive army drawn from across his territories. This was not a raiding force, but a campaign army designed for annihilation. His goal was simple: force the Crusader army into open battle on his terms. The opportunity came when Saladin attacked the city of Tiberias, held by Raymond of Tripoli's wife. The move was deliberate. Saladin knew Raymond would advise caution, while others would demand immediate action. Saving Tiberias would require marching directly into hostile territory, far from reliable water. The Crusader leadership gathered at Sephoria, near abundant springs. Raymond urged them to stay put, arguing that Tiberias could be retaken later and that Saladin would eventually be forced to withdraw. But the pressure was immense. Knights accused Raymond of cowardice or betrayal. King Guy, unsure and eager to assert authority, chose to march. That decision sealed the fate of the kingdom. As the Crusader army left the safety of water and moved eastward under the July sun, Saladin's plan began to close like a trap. Muslim cavalry harassed the march relentlessly. Water supplies dwindled. Morale faltered. What began as a confident advance slowly transformed into a desperate struggle for survival. The stage was set near the Horns of Hattin, two volcanic hills rising from the plain. Here, surrounded by fire, thirst, and an enemy who controlled every path forward, the Crusader kingdom would face the consequences of its choices, and history was about to turn. The Crusader army moved out from Sephoria in early July of 1187, carrying with it nearly every fighting man the kingdom of Jerusalem could muster. Knights, infantry, and clergy marched together, escorting the true cross, the kingdom's most sacred relic. To many, it was a sign of divine favor. To others, it was a dangerous symbol of overconfidence. From the first day, the march went wrong. Saladin's scouts shadowed the Crusaders constantly. Light cavalry circled them like vultures, striking quickly, then vanishing into the heat. Arrows rained down in short, relentless bursts. Each attack forced the Crusaders to halt, regroup, and waste precious energy. Progress slowed. The sun climbed higher. Thirst began to spread through the ranks. Water was everything. Every decision now revolved around water. The Crusaders intended to reach the springs at Hattin, or the Sea of Galilee, but Saladin controlled the routes. His forces deliberately blocked access to wells and streams, driving the Crusader army toward barren ground. Horses collapsed first. Without water, even armored knights became liabilities, weighed down by steel and exhaustion. That night, the Crusaders camped on dry ground near the Horns of Hattin. Fires burned across the plain. Saladin ordered dry grass set alight, sending smoke drifting into the Crusader camp. The smoke choked men and animals alike, stinging eyes already swollen from heat and fatigue. Panic spread quietly, then openly. By dawn, discipline was cracking. King Guy attempted to restore order, but authority meant little to men who could barely stand. Raymond of Tripoli, commanding the vanguard, urged a breakout toward water. Saladin anticipated this. When Raymond led a charge against the Muslim lines, Saladin ordered his troops to open a path. Raymond and a small group escaped, but the main army remained trapped. What looked like a successful charge was actually isolation. The Crusader army was now broken into pieces. Saladin tightened the noose. His archers advanced, firing continuously. Crusader infantry shields splintered. Knights attempted desperate charges, only to find no solid enemy to strike. Muslim cavalry retreated just out of reach, drawing the exhausted knights farther from cohesion. At the center, the true cross became the last rallying point. Clergy urged resistance. Knights dismounted to fight on foot, too weak to mount their horses. The air was thick with dust, smoke, and despair. Men collapsed where they stood, unable to lift their swords. Saladin's commanders coordinated with precision. Drums beat across the field, signaling movements invisible to the Crusaders. Encirclement became complete. Every escape route was sealed. What had once been the army of Jerusalem was now a shrinking island of resistance. As midday approached, the heat became unbearable. Waterskins were empty, lips cracked, vision blurred. The Crusader formations disintegrated under constant pressure. Individual acts of bravery could no longer change the outcome. One by one, Crusader banners fell. The final resistance gathered on the slopes of the Horns of Hattin. Here, surrounded on all sides, the last defenders made their stand. Saladin watched closely. He did not rush. He knew time was his greatest ally. The Crusaders were defeating themselves. When the moment came, Saladin ordered the final assault. The collapse was sudden and absolute. Knights were dragged from their horses. Infantry threw down weapons. The true cross was captured, a moment of devastating symbolic defeat. King Guy was taken prisoner. The military leadership of the kingdom lay broken on the battlefield. What remained was not an army, but a conquered force awaiting judgment. And Saladin was about to decide the fate of the Holy Land.
The final moments of the Battle of Hattin unfolded not in chaos, but in grim inevitability. By the afternoon of July 4th, 1187, the Crusader army was no longer an army at all. What remained clung to the rocky slopes of the Horns of Hattin, two volcanic hills rising from the plain like a broken crown. Around them stood Saladin's forces, disciplined, hydrated, and unbroken. The encirclement was complete. There would be no escape. Saladin's archers advanced methodically. Arrows fell in dense waves, striking shields, armor, and exposed flesh. The Crusaders could barely raise their arms in defense. Many collapsed simply from exhaustion, slipping from consciousness under the sun. Horses lay dead or dying across the field, their bodies blocking movement and crushing morale. At the center of the remaining formation stood the true cross. The relic had been carried into battle as a symbol of divine protection. Now it became a magnet for despair. Clergy held it aloft, calling for courage, urging men to fight on despite the hopelessness. Knights dismounted and formed a last defensive ring around it, knowing that if the cross fell, the kingdom would fall with it. Saladin understood the power of symbols. He ordered his forces to concentrate their pressure toward the center. Muslim infantry closed in, while cavalry sealed the perimeter. There was no reckless charge, no dramatic clash of masses. Instead, it was a tightening grip. Step by step, the Crusader line was compressed, suffocated by exhaustion and fear. Then came the final assault. Muslim troops surged forward from all sides. The Crusader defenders broke almost instantly. Some tried to flee uphill, only to be cut down. Others dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. Resistance collapsed, not with a roar, but with silence. The true cross was seized. Its capture sent a shock through the remaining Crusaders, more devastating than any sword blow. Men who had fought for decades in the Holy Land now understood that everything they believed protected them had failed. The spiritual heart of the Kingdom of Jerusalem was gone. King Guy of Lusignan was taken alive. So was his brother Amalric. Leading nobles and commanders were captured one after another. Among them was Reynaud of Chatillon, the man whose provocations had helped ignite the war. Saladin summoned the captured leaders to his tent. According to Muslim chroniclers, Saladin offered King Guy a cup of water, a gesture of mercy. When Guy passed the cup to Reynaud, Saladin intervened. He reminded Reynaud of his repeated oaths broken, his attacks on Muslim pilgrims, his threats against Mecca and Medina. Then Saladin personally executed him. It was not an act of rage, but judgment. The rest of the prisoners were spared, though thousands of Crusader soldiers were enslaved or executed in the aftermath. The elite military orders, the Templars and Hospitallers, were treated harshly. Saladin viewed them as perpetual warriors, incapable of peace. Many were put to death to ensure they would never fight again. By nightfall, the battlefield was silent. The army that had once defended the Crusader states was destroyed in a single day. Never before had the Kingdom of Jerusalem suffered such a complete military collapse. Its leadership was captive, its sacred relic was lost, its field army no longer existed. Saladin had not merely won a battle, he had shattered an entire political order. News of the disaster spread rapidly. Towns and fortresses across the Crusader states understood what Hattin meant. Without an army to defend them, resistance was impossible. One by one, cities surrendered: Acre, Nablus, Jaffa, Ascalon, Tiberias. Each fell with little or no fighting, and looming above them all was Jerusalem. The city that had been seized by blood in 1099 now stood defenseless. Its fate was sealed the moment the true cross fell at Hattin. Saladin marched with confidence, not as a raider, but as a conqueror, reclaiming what he believed had been unjustly taken. The Battle of Hattin was over, but its consequences were only beginning. In a single day beneath the burning sun, the balance of power in the eastern Mediterranean had shifted forever. The Crusader dream, sustained for nearly a century, lay in ruins on a dry Galilean plain, and the road to Jerusalem now stood wide open.
The aftermath of the Battle of Hattin unfolded with stunning speed as the full weight of the Crusader defeat became impossible to ignore. With the field army destroyed, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was defenseless. Fortresses that had once relied on mobile forces for relief now stood isolated. Saladin advanced methodically, offering terms of surrender rather than devastation. Many cities, recognizing the futility of resistance, opened their gates without a fight. Acre, one of the most important ports in the eastern Mediterranean, fell quickly. Nablus followed. Jaffa and Ascalon soon surrendered. The Crusader presence, built over generations, unraveled in a matter of weeks. In September of 1187, Saladin reached Jerusalem. The city was overcrowded with refugees and defended by a fraction of its former strength. Balian of Ibelin, one of the few surviving noble commanders, organized a desperate defense, fully aware that victory was impossible. Yet the memory of the Crusaders' brutal conquest in 1099 haunted both sides. This time, the outcome would be different. After negotiations, Jerusalem surrendered on October 2, 1187. Unlike the massacre that had marked the city's capture nearly 90 years earlier, Saladin allowed its Christian inhabitants to leave peacefully after paying a ransom. Those who could not afford it were freed by charitable intervention. Holy sites were preserved. The Dome of the Rock was cleansed and restored from Muslim worship, while Christian churches were largely respected. The contrast between conquest and restraint became a defining part of Saladin's legacy. The fall of Jerusalem sent shockwaves across Europe. When the news reached the West, it was received with disbelief and despair. The loss of the Holy City was seen not just as a military failure, but as a spiritual catastrophe. Pope Gregory VIII issued a call for a new crusade almost immediately. Kings who had previously avoided the Eastern Wars now felt compelled to act. This response became the Third Crusade. Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire all took up the cross. Their arrival would restore some Crusader territory along the coast, but Jerusalem itself would remain in Muslim hands. The decisive advantage gained at Hattin could never be fully undone. Beyond its immediate consequences, Hattin reshaped the balance of power in the region. Saladin's victory unified much of the Islamic Near East under a single authority, something rarely achieved before or after. The Crusader states, once aggressive and expansionist, were reduced to fragile coastal enclaves dependent on foreign support. The idea of permanent Christian domination in the Holy Land was effectively shattered. Hattin also changed how history remembered both sides. For the Crusaders, it became a symbol of pride turned into overconfidence, of strategic blindness and internal division. For the Islamic world, it represented unity, discipline, and moral justification after decades of loss. Saladin emerged not only as a conqueror, but as a ruler admired even by his enemies for his restraint and sense of honor. The battlefield itself faded back into silence, but the consequences of that single summer day echoed for centuries. Hattin marked the moment when the Crusader experiment in the Holy Land ceased to be sustainable. The dream had not ended entirely, but it had been irreversibly broken. The world after Hattin was not the same world that had existed before it, and the lessons of that collapse remain as powerful today as they were in 1187. The Battle of Hattin was more than a clash of armies. It was a moment when history turned on discipline, leadership, and choices made under pressure. Empires did not rise or fall that day by chance. They did so because of decisions shaped by fear, faith, ambition, and unity. Hattin reminds us that power is fragile. The Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem had walls, castles, and sacred legitimacy, yet it collapsed when its leaders misjudged their enemy and their environment. Saladin, by contrast, understood patience, coordination, and restraint. His victory was not just military, it was moral, political, and symbolic. This battle also challenges simple ideas of heroes and villains. It shows how belief can inspire courage, but also blind judgment. It shows how mercy after victory can shape legacy more deeply than violence ever could. Hattin forces us to ask whether strength lies in conquest or in the wisdom to know when and how to use power. More than 8 centuries later, the echoes of Hattin still reach us. The struggle for Jerusalem, the clash of cultures, and the consequences of division remain part of our modern world. History does not repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. So here is the question I want to leave you with. Was the fall of the Crusader kingdom inevitable, or did it collapse because of human error at a single critical moment? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story helped you see history more clearly, consider liking the video and subscribing for more cinematic, deeply researched history. Your support helps keep these stories alive.